Hey subscribers, welcome back to another episode of Science with Surback. Today what we're going to be talking about is some extra dilution example problems. So I'm going to do a couple problems and then I want you to do the remaining problems on your own. I'm going to do problems 1 and 3A. And before we get into these problems, we need to remember the formula for dilution. And that formula is M1 times V1 is equal to M2 times V2. All right, so problem 1 says how many milliliters of 2.55 molar sodium hydroxide, or NaOH, is needed to make 125 milliliters of 0.75 molar NaOH. So again, our formula that we're going to utilize is up top here. The first thing that we need to do here is this. We need to list out what we know and what we don't know. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have an M1, which remember is our initial concentration, most of the time molarity, and we find our initial concentration here of 2.55 molar. So I'm going to write down 2.55 big M for molar. Now our V1, our initial volume, is what we're trying to find. It says how many milliliters of that 2.55 item do we have? So this becomes our question mark. Now the molarity, or the concentration that we're trying to dilute to, is shown here in the problem as 0.75 molar. So this becomes 0.75 molar. And our V2, the volume, our final volume we're trying to dilute everything to, is 125 milliliters. So from here, we have everything we need to be able to solve for V1. So what we do here is we take 2.55 big M times our V1. We don't know what that is. We set that equal to our final concentration, which is 0.75 big M for molarity, times 125 milliliters. Now, we want to get V1 by itself. It is attached via multiplication, so what we need to do is this. We need to divide each side by 2.55 big M for molar. And again, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Now, with this, what I want you to do is put a set of parentheses around the business on top. So we have this set of parentheses, 0.75 times 125, all divided by 2.55. We press enter, and we get a value of 36.76, and I'm going to round that to 2 decimals. I'll do 2 things here. I'm going to round it to 2 decimals, but first I want to write exactly what's down in my calculator. So I'm going to actually put 36.8 milliliters, and that is your volume. And then technically here, if you're rounding to the correct number of significant digits, it would be 37. So I'll say down below here, rounded to 2 sig figs, this would get us 37 milliliters. Now, again, 36.8 is a pretty good value there, and would be totally acceptable. So what this means is that we would take 36.8 milliliters of the 2.55 molar concentration solution, and then we would add additional water to get us to 125 milliliters. All right. So let's try number 3A together. So number 3A says, what is the molarity of a 500 milliliter, or when 500 milliliters of water is added to 20 milliliters of 6 molar nitric acid, or HNO3. So what we need to do is this. We need to list out our variables, and we'll start with our initial concentration. This time, our initial concentration is actually listed at the very end. It is 6 molar nitric acid. Okay, and so then we find our volume. Our amount of volume that we have initially is that volume listed at the end, which is 20 milliliters. So we have 20.0 milliliters. And our second concentration is not listed. Our M2 is not listed. And so that's going to be our question mark. Now, our final volume is something we really need to be careful with. We see that we have 500 milliliters of water, but that 500 milliliters of water is added in addition to that original 20 milliliters of this 6 molar nitric acid. So we need to say 500 plus the 20 milliliters. Now, you can plug that into your calculator, but our final volume would actually be a volume of 520 milliliters. Okay, now we have all our values. We can solve for that final concentration. So again, 6 molar times 20 milliliters is equal to that final concentration times the final volume, which we had to add those volumes together, which would be 520.0 milliliters. Now again, we want to get M2 by itself. It is attached via multiplication, and so what we do here is divide each side by 520 to get M2 by itself. Okay, again, up top, we need a set of parentheses. So we're going to take in our calculator 6 times 20 divided by 520. So set of parentheses, 6.00 times 20.0 divided by 520.0. We press enter. Rounding to 3 significant digits, we get 0.231. So 0.231, our unit for concentration would be big M for molarity, and that would be what M2 equals. Now, again, these are a little tricky on number 3, so I want to give you a hint. I'm not going to do 3B for you. I want to give you a hint here. For your V2, it is equal to 30, what you originally start with, 30 milliliters, plus what you add to it. So plus 80. Now again, I'm not going to add that together. I'm not going to do that for you, but I did want to give you that hint to help you out with this particular problem. All right. All the others, problems 2, 3B, 4, and 5, you need to do on your own. I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and as always, if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe.